Zach LaVine just went absolutely bonkers inside the Golden One Center. 42 points, 8 made threes, and the Sacramento Kings demolished the Charlotte Hornets. We're breaking it all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And it was a lot of fun tonight inside of the Golden One Center watching not just the Sacramento Kings demolish the Charlotte Hornets 130-88, but watching Zach LaVine put on a show. Really his breakout Sacramento Kings performance. I know he had a 30 bomb the other night or before the All-Star break when the Kings beat the New Orleans Pelicans in New Orleans. I'm pretty sure it was one of those two Pelicans games. He had it was actually the one that they lost. I know he had that game, but this 42-point explosion that he had here inside the Golden One Center, especially with the fourth quarter that he had, my goodness, when a player gets that hot, right, where you just, there's an energy crackling through the arena, right? When Zach LaVine had the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter when he was just going crazy, there was a buzz. Everybody, as he was taking the ball off the floor, was just waiting for him to shoot again because you knew he was going to, right? That's how red hot he was. 42 points, 16 of 19 from the field, 8 of 9 from three-point range. In the fourth quarter alone, he scored 18 points, but he did so in just 5 minutes, right? He just went absolutely crazy from three-point range. The Golden One Center went crazy tonight, too. Hey, a Monday night game, given the circumstance of the Sacramento Kings against a team like the Charlotte Hornets, who, let's be honest, they're not a good basketball team. I thought the crowd here inside the Golden One Center was fantastic. This was a fun night. Like a fun win, a needed win, and for Zach LaVine to go off the way that he did too was a welcome sight for all of us to see, even if there are still concerns about this team going forward, right? Even those like myself with kind of a pessimistic viewpoint of this team. We can enjoy tonight for what it was, a really entertaining basketball game with an incredible individual performance from Zach LaVine. Look, I mentioned Charlotte. We'll just get it out of the way, right? The Charlotte Hornets are a bad basketball team. So it would be easy for myself to dismiss a lot of the good that we saw from tonight's game and go, well, it was just against Charlotte. Good luck doing that against Boston or whatever. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not trying to be a miserable person and poo-poo on everything good that the Sacramento Kings do. Number two is it didn't matter who the Sacramento Kings played. Right? They needed to get this win. They needed to get back on track, and they needed a breakout offensive performance like this, especially with how much the offense struggled against the Golden State Warriors a couple of nights ago or a few nights ago on Friday to start their weekend. But what I like about this performance from Zach LaVine specifically is it wasn't just him hitting shots, right? 8 of 9 from three-point range. You're obviously on one. But in the fourth quarter, that was really the only quarter where he started, chucking. He was just heat checking left and right because he could. And at that point, Charlotte had kind of given up and he was going for it. But the first 3 quarters, where he continued to be a very, very efficient scorer, not just from three-point range, but on all levels, he was making the right decisions, right? He was efficient. He was attacking, knowing when to put the ball on the floor and try and get to the rim, when to pull up from three. He was moving really well off of the ball. It's funny because I mentioned this on Twitter, didn't talk about it over the weekend because other than the Saturday's podcast, I didn't go to Kings practice. But one of the things that Doug Christie said on Saturday during practice is he said that he wasn't making an excuse for Zach LaVine's offensive struggles since joining the Sacramento Kings, but he was talking about how Zach LaVine he was trying to be a good teammate. right? He wasn't just joining the Sacramento Kings and saying, all right, this is my team now. De'Aaron Fox is gone. I'm taking over. I'm taking all the shots. Give me the basketball and get out of my way, right? That's not who Zach LaVine has been since joining the Kings. He's been very intentional about trying to fit in, been very intentional about trying to learn his teammates, how they want the ball, get them involved. Plus, I think there's an extra level of responsibility on everybody's shoulders, but his shoulders as well for playmaking, considering the Kings are lacking, to say the least, point guard depth. And what Doug Christie said before tonight's game was that the Kings just want Zach to be himself, right? Be yourself. And Zach's self is not a playmaker. I mean, he does have playmaking ability, but that's not his primary skill. Zach's self is not a ISO creator and scorer that always tries to attack the defense and get his teammates involved, right? He's capable of doing all those things, but that's not who he is. Zach is a pure scorer. That is what Zach does, and he moves really well off the ball. He can catch lobs above the rim like he did tonight. He can shoot lights out from three-point range, which he was doing this season before joining the Sacramento Kings, right? Seeing Zach get more comfortable playing off of teammates, especially Domantas Sabonis, and I'm going to talk about the two of them more in just a second. That was like, this was the most comfortable I felt Zach LaVine looked, not just because shots were falling, but the quality of shots that he was creating for himself throughout this game were really, really good, because the Kings, I think, made an emphasis on not just Zach being himself, but playing more of their brand and their style of basketball instead of kind of this ISO-heavy, balls not moving offense that we've seen over the last handful of games, certainly that we saw against the Golden State Warriors on Friday night. Here is both Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan after the game talking about Zach's big night.
It felt good, especially being able to do it here for the first time with the home crowd. Played here a bunch of times, obviously, and felt the energy. So, we needed a win like this, not just me, but as a whole team, especially after, coming out of the break the way we did. So it was good to get a win like this.
It took long enough. I kept telling them the whole game, just shoot it. That's the outcome. Go 16 for 19. It's nothing new for me. I think it was just cool to, have the bench going and a crowd, going as well.
So Domantas Sabonis' stat line tonight is not the most impressive, right? We've seen significantly better from Domas. 7 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. Didn't even get his typical double-double, right? First off, Domas only played 27 minutes in tonight's game, which I'm not saying at all as a negative. I think it's crazy. Like earlier this season, the idea of Domas only playing 27 minutes is unheard of. Domas only playing 27 minutes and the Kings winning that game, unfathomable, right? The Kings have needed Domas to play heavy minutes throughout the course of this season. But since the addition of Jonas Valanciunas, that has given Doug Christie and given the Kings an option, some depth to be able to at least not make the workload as heavy on the shoulders of Sabonis. And on a night like tonight where the Kings could get away with only playing Sabonis 27 minutes and Jonas Valanciunas 14, that is a really big deal. That is a really big plus, a really big benefit for this Kings team that's going to be locked in some very, very intense battles. And every single game from here on out over these final now 25 games of the season, all of them are going to matter, and they need Sabonis to be at his absolute best. So being able to give him a little bit of rest here and there in certain games when it calls for it, like a 130-88 blowout victory over the Charlotte Hornets at home, it's great to see the Kings have the capability of doing that because of the addition of Jonas Valanciunas. But when Sabonis was on the floor, we saw the Kings get back to playing through him. And I had like the Hallelujah Angels singing in my head while I was watching this. Because we've heard so much about the Kings offensively want to try and get back to where they were 2 years ago, that 2023-2024 season when they were the number one offense in the league and number one offense in NBA history at the time. What was the foundation of that offense? Domantas Sabonis. Playing through Sabonis. DHOs. Drop-off passes, right? Having Sabonis always touch the ball and work, not necessarily in the high post, but work above the key, above the 3-point line, and run players off of him, use his playmaking ability and his natural impulse to get his teammates involved, use that to your advantage, as well as the size that he has to screen off or shield off defenders. The Kings have not done that consistently or effectively really at all this season, and certainly not since the Zach LaVine trade. Not that it was Zach LaVine's fault, just for some reason this team went away from that. With the scoring ability of LaVine, and then of course DeMar DeRozan being on this team, the Kings just have not found a way to fully get back to using one of the primary strengths of your all-NBA caliber center. He's a back-to-back all-NBA third-team member, right? And one of his primary strengths is what he can do on the offensive end when you play through him. Now, I understand that 2 years ago, the Warriors kind of figured the Kings out, and the Kings didn't really have an alternative for if the DHO game and playing through Sabonis wasn't necessarily working. Well, now you have other weapons on this team like DeRozan and LaVine. Plus, Domantas Sabonis has expanded his range and added that three-point shot. So why are you intentionally going away from that when you know it's a strength of yours, and now you've improved the areas in which defenses could exploit you? Go play through Domantas Sabonis. We saw it a lot more tonight, and again, I know it's against the Charlotte Hornets. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Kings offense looked the best it's looked with this new regime together because of how much they were emphasizing playing through Sabonis. And I thought Sabonis and LaVine together looked really, really good. It's not the same two-man game as like Sabonis and Monk with the pick and rolls and things of that nature, and we did see the two of them get back to that, thank God. But we saw LaVine getting more comfortable receiving the ball from Sabonis, moving off of Sabonis, allowing that to create space, which resulted in him hitting a three or getting downhill and trying to get to the rim. Sabonis and LaVine establishing a good two-man game between the two of them, I think is essential to not just LaVine's success, but the success of the Sacramento Kings offense for the remainder of the season. So it was good to see tonight. Now, can and will you continue to emphasize it, and will you continue to keep it going consistently throughout the remainder of the season and find a way to continue to be effective with it even against top teams that you have coming in your building here over the month of March? That is yet to be seen. But reestablishing Sabonis as the foundation of this offense doesn't mean he's the best player, doesn't mean he's your go-to guy, but consistently touching the ball and playing through Sabonis on offense, I think that is a key to the success of the Kings this year. And I was happy to see it tonight. Here's Zach LaVine and interim head coach Doug Christie talking about playing through Sabonis. Zach, in the second quarter specifically, it looked like you and Domas were playing off of each other a lot and getting more comfortable with that kind of two-man game. Can you just speak to how, whether it's the practice time or just the trial by fire, how you and he have become more comfortable playing off of each other?
I've always been someone I think that experience is always the best teacher. You need to, as much practice time you get, you need to actually have it in live action. So seeing where he screens, where he likes to, he's someone that likes to have the ball and drop passes and handoffs. I know how to play off him, like it's the back of my hand. So it's a little different, but with everybody else, just figuring out your spots on the floor. So, we're getting better at it.
Hey, Doug, especially in the first half, just personal observation, it seemed like there was more of an emphasis on playing through Domantas Sabonis a lot, and especially with, I noticed Zach and Domas seemingly playing off each other and getting more comfortable with each other. Was it an emphasis to play through him tonight, and how important has it been over the practice days to get those new guys comfortable with Domas and the way he plays?
I always want to play through Domas. He's a special player. If we play five, we play through him and he's on the perimeter. I think that trying to play four is a little different because now he catches it at the elbow, and that reminds me of Webb and Blade and the ability to split and him to make plays from that position. And he's willing to shoot the three at the same time, but he's also now he's a little bit closer to the basket if he wants to pull up and shoot that jump shot. He's got guys on simple back doors, but they're also playing out of four allows the ball usually to move from one side of the floor to the other. So we get to a second side, move the defense around. A couple people have touched the ball by now, and then we attack. Not to say that any of those initial movements aren't attack based, because that's one of the things that I didn't like that we would do sometimes is we just dribble handoff. No, we don't want to just dribble handoff to dribble handoff. When I hand it off, I'm looking to attack. When I pass it, he's looking to attack. And I thought that there was a little bit more of that tonight, but to Domas's credit, he's catching the ball, he's looking for people, and we continue to build in that area. Yeah.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. When they swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, Zach LaVine just missed that mark, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. Any player in the league, anybody, not just a Sacramento King, anybody. If they score 50 points or more in a game during this season, Dash Pass members get 50% off of an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Whether you're looking for a game day feast while you're watching a 50-point performance, some late night cravings after a Kings game, lunch on the go the next day, or fueling a watch party for a future sporting event, DoorDash has got you covered with the ability to bring you your favorite foods from your favorite retailers or restaurants and take it right to you, taking out of that hassle. And now, when NBA players score 50 points, you really save big. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off of an order the next day, up to $10 off. All you do is use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. You must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. So unfortunately tonight for the Kings, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. Unfortunately, Keon Ellis got hurt tonight. Now, we do not know, as of now, the severity of the injury, right? And what happened was, to the best of our abilities, our understanding is, Keon Ellis came down on the foot of Charlotte Hornets center Yusuf Nurkic and looked to roll or tweak his ankle a little bit. He came out of the game, went back to the locker room, never returned to the game, did at one point come back out of the locker room and sit on the bench for a little bit. I don't know if he felt that he was going to test it and see if he could keep playing on it. And then we noticed him, I think it was to start the second half, he didn't come back out and join the team for the second half. And then we got the news in the third quarter that it was a right ankle injury and he was going to be done for that game. Doug Christie did not have any kind of update after the game. I expect they'll go through the typical process, get it looked at, and make sure everything is okay. There's not any kind of severe damage. Missing Keon Ellis for any period of time is a big deal, but especially a extended period of time, I'm talking like 5-6+ games, that's going to be really, really difficult for the Sacramento Kings to overcome. Short term, right? Like their next game, they take on the Utah Jazz. They can get away with it, right? On this road trip is not an easy road trip by any means, but there's some games during this road trip where they could probably get away with not having Keon Ellis. But for some of the games that they have in this building coming up in March, Keon Ellis is going to be essential. So I hope that he's okay. As soon as we have any kind of update on the status of Keon Ellis, I will provide it for you, whether it's here on Locked On Kings. You can follow me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack or Blue Sky at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me, and I can email you an update, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. But keep an eye out for any kind of update. Hopefully we should get some news on the status of Keon tomorrow. But I did think it was interesting that a lot of people thought that Keon was going to get the start today, that Doug was going to be experimenting with a change in his starting lineups. Ultimately, he decided not to. But he did have Keon come into the game and replace Malik Monk like 4 minutes into the game. And I thought that was interesting because that had to have been a predetermined rotational decision. Because Monk got off to a pretty good start in this game. I think he had like 5 points in the first few minutes. I thought he was taking better care of the basketball, making better decisions, moving the basketball, right? Malik Monk got off to a pretty strong start, and then Keon Ellis came in and replaced him. I think maybe that feeds into or gives us a little more context of if Doug were to make a change to the starting lineup and insert Keon Ellis in, I guess it's fair to assume that it would be Malik Monk that he takes out in that scenario, although I don't think we're there yet, even if Keon Ellis was healthy. But look, there was clearly an emphasis on getting Keon into the game as soon as possible, and that also allowed for more staggered rotations so that Zach LaVine didn't have to be alone as the primary playmaker and facilitator with that second unit like we saw a handful of times over the last few games, and it just quite frankly, did not work. It's been a disaster, to be completely honest with you. So bringing Malik Monk out right away allows for him to be on the floor more with kind of that second unit group, and I think we saw that pay off tonight. Now, in the second half, when Keon was not available, it was Markelle Fultz that came into the game like 4 minutes into the third quarter. So clearly it's a rotational decision that we might see for a little while of the Kings going to a bench guard quickly to start games and to start the second half to create their rotations and their second unit rotations with Malik Monk out there. But with Keon Ellis going down, other bench guys I thought stepped up brilliantly in tonight's game. Like the first guy I want to talk about actually has like zeros across the board in terms of stat column, but Jake LaRavia, I thought Jake LaRavia did a phenomenal job defensively. Jake LaRavia is a freaking pest, right? I was watching him off the ball guarding LaMelo, and LaMelo was getting frustrated, right? He picked up a tech in this game. I don't think it was when LaRavia was on the floor, but like LaMelo Ball is standing off in the corner or away from the ball and away from the play. And LaRavia is guarding him and pressed up on him. It's like a deny defense, right? To deny him the ball and not let him move and get comfortable. Pressed up against him like it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals and they don't want him to touch the ball, right? LaRavia is just there, and I'm watching, and I watched LaMelo like push LaRavia away, and then LaRavia comes right back and is just like almost forearm into the chest, not fully shoving or anything like that, but just very much there in LaMelo's space. And on this particular possession that I was watching this in the third quarter, LaMelo once again pushes LaRavia away to try and get some space to actually get to the basketball, is called for an offensive foul. Right, I thought LaRavia's defensive intensity and defensive presence was really, really good off of the bench. That was fun to see. Markelle Fultz, I thought just another solid performance, right? Like coming in and he's a part of this rotation, or at least he has been over these last couple of games, and I think he's doing a solid job as that backup point guard or just another ball handler on this team that can come in and play however many minutes. I think he had like 11 or 12 minutes in tonight's game, 6 or 7 points. Like he comes in and provides a steady veteran guard presence that we're not expecting too much from him, but he's making a solid impact, and he seems to be fitting well and finding his footing with this Kings team and bringing something that this Kings team lacked. So I was very pleased with Markelle Fultz. And then Trey Lyles, right? Like Trey Lyles stayed ready. I think, truth be told, I think Trey Lyles, when completely healthy, is out of the rotation, or when the Kings are completely healthy, I should say. Like, he didn't play at all during the first half. Came in the third quarter, but at that point, the rotation had been changed with Keon Ellis' injury, right? Now, credit to Trey. He came in the second half and was on the floor for the Sacramento Kings, creating a lot of separation. In fact, I think in, just a few minutes, like a handful of minutes, he was like a plus 20-something. It wasn't because of him that the Kings went on that massive run, but he stayed ready and he was impactful. And it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on if he is truly out of the rotation or not, because this is the final year of his deal, and I think the expectation is that the Kings will probably move on, and he'll move on this offseason. But he's one of those guys that I did not expect really at any point, as long as he was healthy, to be out of the rotation. But that may just be the case with what the Sacramento Kings are trying to do. So I was impressed by him. I was impressed with a lot of bench guys in this game tonight. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a better payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3 like Zach LaVine tonight. I never feel like I miss a chance to get involved in the action. You will feel the same way. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Place $5 on the easiest bet that you can find. Again, visit FanDuel.com. Join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, yes, it's been fun being positive tonight with the performance of Zach LaVine and how the Sacramento Kings played, but there is one primary negative to bring up and talk about. Now, I intentionally saved this for the last segment, and I'm not going to harp on this too long because there's no point. I'm not actively seeking out reasons to be negative about this game. But that third quarter by the Sacramento Kings was not good. And Doug Christie used the term unacceptable multiple times in his post-game press conference, right? The Kings had a 20-point lead at halftime. They allowed the Hornets to get that down to single digits at one point in the third quarter because suddenly they just stopped taking care of the basketball. Turnovers have been a major problem for this team with the incorporation of all these new guys. Turnovers have killed them. And, I mean, they had 24 the other night against the Golden State Warriors. They had 8 turnovers at halftime. And then they had 8 turnovers in the third quarter alone. So doubling their turnover total in just one quarter. Now, the good news is because of Zach LaVine and some other players, the Kings went on a little bit of a push in the final minute or so of the third quarter that extended that lead right back up to 16 going into the fourth quarter, and then that's when the Kings completely pulled away and blew this game out of the water. So it ultimately didn't come back to bite them tonight. But again, it's because it was against a team like the Charlotte Hornets. If the Kings play a really, really good half of basketball like they did tonight against the Cavaliers or the Knicks or the Celtics or the Thunder or any of the tough teams coming through the Golden One Center next month, they cannot have a quarter like this third quarter because it will bury them. They will not just lose games, they will fall behind by significant margins. If they have this kind of third quarter that the Kings had, if they have that against almost any other team in the NBA, they're getting murdered for it. So they got lucky that they had this kind of quarter against the Charlotte Hornets tonight, but this is something that this team still needs to clean up. Tonight, the offense looked a whole lot better for the most part. But in that third quarter, they took their foot off the gas. They lost focus a little bit. Things got sloppy. And they gave the Hornets at least a little bit of hope. And for a team like the Hornets, maybe you can afford to give them a little bit of hope. For a team like the Cavaliers or the Thunder, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And they will kill you in the process. So the Kings need to do a better job, not just with the third quarter, just clean up those quarters altogether, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to have a perfect game. But get rid of these catastrophic quarters and catastrophic stretches that have been the death of this team all freaking season. Not just since Doug Christie took over, not just since the Zach LaVine trade. Right? All season, the Kings have been killed by these one quarters or stretches in games where they just fall apart and teams either build a big lead or completely erase all the hard work that the Sacramento Kings did. Clean that stuff up, and the Kings should be in a better spot. But if they can't clean those up, they're in a world of hurt with this upcoming schedule. Look, you did what you were supposed to do. You got to win on your home floor. You beat the Charlotte Hornets. You beat them comfortably. An important game to pick up. Right now, on Wednesday, you start a 4-game road trip in Utah against a Jazz team that you've already beaten 3 times so far this season. It's another you got to go and have it game to build yourself whatever safety net that you can build heading into the month of March, right? Because this month of March is brutal. It is a hell month, right? They have a stretch of games with battles with the Knicks, battles with the Clippers, battles with the Thunder, the Cavs, the Celtics, right? All within a short stretch. They need to be ready to attack those games, and they have to find a way to get some of them. Not all of them, but if they want to somehow find a way to battle into a top 6 seed and avoid the play-in, they absolutely need to win a majority of them. These are going to be tough games, so give yourself as much of a safety net as you possibly can by winning the games and handling business the way you did tonight against Charlotte. Do the same thing against the Utah Jazz on Wednesday. And then the next home game that the Kings have in this building will be against De'Aaron Fox and the San Antonio Spurs. Now, I thought it was interesting. The Kings, they always put up a graphic, right? The next home game to kind of advertise, hey, here's the next time that you can get your tickets now. Here's the next game that you can come out to the Golden One Center and watch your Kings play. And they always have a player from the Kings and then a player from the opposing team. For the Spurs graphic, they had a picture of De'Aaron Fox. And there were boos. There were a lot of boos. It was noticeable. Now, look, if you're coming to the Golden One Center and paying the prices to come to the Golden One Center, you can, within reason, without violating the NBA code of conduct or anything like that, you can do and say whatever you want. Right? You're a paying customer. You've earned that right to voice your opinion. If you are pissed off at De'Aaron Fox, or if like you're not on my team anymore, therefore you're my enemy, you want to boo De'Aaron Fox, I'm not. Who am I to tell you not to? Right? My personal perspective, and I know a lot of you think that I'm just a blind De'Aaron Fox lover. My personal perspective is that even with how it ended, De'Aaron Fox does not deserve to be booed. And I sincerely hope that while there are going to be a few boo birds here and there and whatever, I sincerely hope that that De'Aaron doesn't receive that kind of return to Sacramento, considering everything he and this city kind of went through together. Look, I know that he didn't win here in Sacramento nearly as much as people were hoping he did. He's still one of the best players in franchise history, which says more about the franchise than it does about him. And while he was here, he put on for this city until things got rocky there towards the end. Right? If I understand if some of you are mad at him, and if you want to hop into the comment section and say, Matt, I'm booing him no matter what. Like I said, you do you. I would just hope that the majority of the fan base recognizes and appreciates who De'Aaron was and what he was to this Kings team for so long, and how involved in the community he was here in Sacramento. He deserves to get a big ovation like a lot of returners do here to Sacramento. And then when he starts playing the game, and if he starts cooking against the Kings and scoring against the Kings, then you can let your feelings be known if he's at that point an opponent of the Kings. But when he's introduced, and if he gets any kind of tribute video, which I hope he does, I hope fans don't boo it. But hey, that's my plea for it. I can't boo or cheer at all. I mean, I'm a media member in a press box. I can't say or do anything. But 17,000, 18,000 people are going to be here for Fox's return. And I hope they give him the welcome back that I feel he's earned and he deserves from his time here in Sacramento. But hey, that's just me. You do you. I don't judge you. I don't blame you. You voice your opinion however you want to. You absolutely have that right. I don't think less of you. I don't think you're less of a Kings fan or anything like that for booing De'Aaron Fox if that's what you want to. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's cool, and I don't think he deserves that. Just my opinion on the situation, if you care or not. Thank you so much for your support here on Locked On Kings. As always, Wednesday, Kings and Jazz. I will have a post-game podcast for that. I'm planning on being joined by Jason Ross tomorrow. Jason Ross from Sacktown Sports 1140, of course, Kings radio broadcaster. He and I will chat about kind of the state of this team, his outlook on this team going forward, and he'll, I'm sure, have some thoughts on tonight's game and Zach LaVine's performance. So join me tomorrow for that. Thursday, I am heading down to Phoenix, Arizona. Well, Mesa, Arizona. I'm going to be covering A's spring training for ABC 10. That's going to carry me through the weekend over there, and the Kings play the Houston Rockets in Houston on Saturday, I believe. There is a chance, I don't know for sure yet, but there is a chance that I might not do a post-game podcast that night because of my other responsibilities and the time that I'm spending with family when I'm down there. But I haven't made that decision yet. I haven't figured out those specifics yet. But I will be in Arizona on Thursday and Friday. If you're in going to spring training for any reason, you're going down there at the same time, hey, come by and say hi. But I appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.